Yeah, and what you said before about the net positive and experimenting with drugs and meditation and how different drugs or different levels of meditation, uh, different ways you apply it are going to work differently for everybody. That reminded me of a quote from Winston Churchill that I was reading in a book called The Splendid and the Vile, and it was about the whole time of the London bombings before the United States entered World War II. And he was up late one night drinking like he did almost, every single night, and his wife gave him a really hard time that night in particular about drinking. And he said to her, I've taken much more from alcohol than alcohol has taken from me. And I was like, wow, that's a really good way to think about drugs. If you feel like if you feel like you're taking much more away from the drug than the drug is taking from you, then that's a net positive. That's why should you stop? But if you feel like that drug is draining you and the positive effects that you're getting out of it are long term burning you out or demolishing your focus, then that's probably a good reason to stop.
Yeah, definitely. Uh, I think, I know at least one person who, in my whole experience of them, they could probably be classified as an alcoholic, but they become invariably more pleasant rather than less pleasant when they're drunk. They're never a mean drunk. And, so they're you can say maybe 10 years down the line they'll start becoming a mean drunk, but maybe not. There, what you have to worry about is just the physical damage to the
Mm-hmm.
liver. And that's probably reason enough to kick the habit. But I am astounded by just how different people's reactions to drugs are. So my reaction to weed is the same as yours, except that the paranoid panic attacks happened for me basically from the beginning. The very first time I really got high, I had a experience that was similar to yours where I actually thought that I might be dying, and I basically blacked out. And then it just took me hours to recover. But, you know, more or less since then, with weed, I've always been it's always been sort of half and half, where half of my experiences will just end in pure paranoia. And if you could give me the redo button on not smoking, it would be an obvious choice not to smoke. And then half of them have been net positive experiences. But and it's really unpredictable, which way it's going to go. So in general, I just don't smoke weed. And I break that rule infrequently enough that it's a negligible part of my life. But I do know people that honestly look into themselves, and every time they smoke weed, it's basically a positive experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no reason to doubt that. So you have to be really wary that you're not doing something because of peer pressure, or because you think it makes you look cool. I think, a huge percentage of teenagers especially smoke weed not because they feel good, but because it looks so cool to smoke weed, and especially to enjoy smoking weed. So it gives you a huge incentive to pretend you're enjoying it when you're not. And then other people legitimately enjoy it, and perhaps it's a guilty pleasure, something they indulge in a bit too much. But then it's just in the category of, something you want to enjoy in a disciplined way. And we're all in this category with some things. For most people, sweets are in that category. You don't want to have too many cookies, but you also don't necessarily want to cut it out of your life entirely.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're just in a familiar terrain of trying to exercise some willpower. But as long as you're not doing it for the wrong reasons, namely peer pressure. And as long as you're not, and then there are just the clear cases where someone has a an addiction, and what I mean by that word is they have a self-awareness problem. Like they're convinced that their drinking isn't having any negative consequences in their life, but it's just obvious that it is. Like they got fired from their job because they were drunk during the day, or they threw up all over their friend's nice apartment and they barely remember it. And that's a case where it's just any rational person can see that your drinking is actually harming your life, but you're under the mistaken belief that it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to there has to be some way of getting over that self-deception, realizing that it's in your self-interest to stop or to reduce or cut it out completely. And that's where addiction programs come in. But if you're not in one of those two categories, I'm very libertarian about my attitude to drugs.
Yeah, what's helped me avoid the